tell us they're going to beat us and they're going to fight against us, the first thing we've got to do is to fight them. And the problem we face at the moment, there's a man, in Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King said an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yeah. And when we see bulldozers and cops going in against people who fled suffering and destitution, and anybody who's been to any of these camps, it is a map of the world where every bomb has been dropped. Where are you from? Afghanistan. Where are you from? Iraq. Where are you from? Eritrea. A war, which actually Yemen, anywhere where there's bombs been dropped, a lot from this country, there are people that escape from them. And actually the demonization of Muslims today echoes every single racism that's taken place before. Whether it's the Irish, the Jewish community, the black community, every single time it's the same history. And we have to ask why. Why are they doing this? You see, when David Cameron gets up and says he's worried about Muslim women speaking English, my good friend Maz Salim always says the only language that he's clear in is racist bullshit, right? And he's an expert in racist bullshit. But why is he speaking racist bullshit? Did he learn this at Eton? He probably did. Yes. But the reason why, think about it, somebody from the most segregated school in the country, segregated on gender, in every other way, starts telling us about how we should live. Yeah. That's the truth of it. And we have to ask the question, why are they demonizing Muslims and refugees? Because they're trying to divert us away from the real problems. Yeah. Yeah. That's the truth of it. They are trying to divert us away from the real problems. Every time I hear this, I always say, Mr. Cameron, if you want to understand why there's not enough money, why don't we Google it, right? Because Google doesn't pay its taxes. It's not refugees that did that. You can find them. You can Google it and find out where the money is. Why don't you do that? There isn't a question of a lack of resources. There's a question about where those resources are going to go. When they start saying migrants are draining the NHS, I blame Hunt. Hunt's to blame. He's devastating the question of what's going on. They're trying to divert our attentions, and the lessons of history are clear. When I went to Auschwitz, you know the most shocking figure about Auschwitz, about the mass murder? Is the population of Jews that existed inside Germany was 0.73%. 0.73%. And they were there for 1,000 years. And they were blamed for a crisis that took place in the 1930s. And our slogan has always been never again. Never again will that happen. Why are children screaming and crying in camps, and people are trying to politically benefit from that? They're trying to say how tough they are on the poorest set of people. And I want to break them. I want to make sure, when I go to those camps, people always say, I'm glad you bring us food, I'm glad you bring us clothes, I'm glad you bring us all those things, and I'm glad you bring us solidarity, but I want to get out of here and I want to come to Britain. And I keep saying, you're welcome here. This is what this rally is about. It's about breaking David Cameron because he's trying to break us. He's trying to divide us. And we can break him. And I'll tell you how we break him, by mass numbers. I remember them telling me, Nelson Mandela, he used to wear t-shirts saying, hang Nelson Mandela. I'll tell you who I would like to be hanged. And I mean that in a non-violent way. Just in case to prevent people out here. Right? But the question of prevent is important. You see, I went to Rotherham where a man was murdered and the community said, will you prevent racism? Will you prevent attacks on ourselves? Because that's what people want. They want the end of being treated, being terrorised. That's the letter of it. And there was a report that came out yesterday, I don't know if people saw it in The Guardian, about where most of the attacks are coming from in terms of lone wolves. They're coming from right-wingers. They're coming from fascists. But you don't hear the same kind of talk. In fact, I mean, when you hear the talk, think about this word, Jimmy Savile. I mean, I was talking to somebody from the BBC and they asked me, why do you hold this point of view? I said, well, you fit the profile, mate. If we're going to talk about culture, you fit the profile. So we talk about that. Well, I'm rather angry about that. I don't believe you can, I want to be treated as an individual. Oh, come on. That's not the method that they apply to other people. It's a question of demonising them. And the why we're here is very important. Every struggle, I'm sick of the way they're destroying the word radicalised. You see, I love the suffragettes were radicalised against women's oppression. That's a lovely thing, to be radicalised against that. I love the fact that people argue for gay liberation. And they're radicalised, they say, radicalised. Arguing for equality, they almost make it a sin, don't they? To be radicalised, to argue for equality. Actually, this city in Peterloo demanded that workers had the vote. Too radical, very radical kind of views and stuff like this. It's terribly radical, right? It's called democracy, equality and change. And when we are standing up fighting for refugees, we're fighting for ourselves as well. Because I tell you something, every law that they've ever passed against a refugee and asylum seeker has been applied to everybody else. If you want to know where the credit tax laws came from, look at it 10 years ago when they passed the laws against asylum seekers. And we have to break this argument. Because I tell you, every single time that they do this, they open the door to far-right and fascist politics. And if you look across in France, who's benefiting from the level of racism against asylum seekers? It's Marine Le Pen. It's Marine Le Pen. And I go back to that question, how did we break... Marine Le Pen's best mate over here, guess who he was? Nick Griffin. And we kicked his ass. I'm not afraid to say we kicked his ass, in a non-violent way. Right, just in case it's been recorded, as whoever it is. We have to do this, right? You never get any freedom except for if you struggle for it. My grandfather used to say, the door that squeaks the most gets the most oil. Right? If you want to resist, you have to resist. What do I want from Manchester? To be honest, I'll be honest with you, I love Manchester, but we've got to go to London. Why do we have to go to London? Yeah. The last time we had a big demonstration for refugees, you saw David Cameron go to a refugee camp in Sudan. I don't know if people saw, he went to a refugee camp to say, he looked really uncomfortable. Do you mean? It's like, how long do I have to talk to these people? The cameras are on. Now you can see it. Hello people, poor people who are in trouble. I'd like to help you. I am a very nice man. When he came across like that, right? I want him to go to the North Pole, right? Because the demonstration's so big that they feel isolated, and we're going to have a tremendous struggle. Racism is going to be used in the referendum all the way through. We know this. We know what's coming. What we have to do is build up our side. We have to support the nurses and the doctors fighting in the NHS and make the link between when they try and divide us. When they try and divide us and they don't get away with it, that's when they lose. That's why we have to fight for the refugees. We're fighting for ourselves, and we can win.